This morning we've been exploring how we set our frames to create our reality, because you're the creator. Whatever you say it is, whatever emotions you associate, whatever evaluations, whatever language you use, whatever movies you make, you're the creator. And as you take ownership of that and explore what you have created or what you created by default, because you were inside some environment that you just absorbed those meanings. But you absorbed them, and you drew those conclusions. Now we want to do the other side of the formula. That is, really taking ownership for our meaning-making power. So the next exercise is an exercise to highlight your ability to create some fantastic meanings. So think about something that is really rich in meaning to you. And if I feel my meanings, then I can use my feelings of appreciation. What do you appreciate? What do you melt in appreciation? What stirs your soul and gives you goosebumps so that you just stand in awe of something that you consider so significant, so meaningful? And you might pick something small and simple, like just sitting on the ocean watching a beautiful sunset or sunrise, holding a baby, taking a walk in the woods. Michael Hall's books. Thanks for the anchoring. Something that is rich in meaning in your mind, and also you've embodied it to where you can easily just go into a sense of feeling the richness of that meaning. So it'll show up in feelings of appreciation, feelings of awe, feelings of love, feelings of recognition of just immense value, something that already you've said is really significant. And it touches you. It moves you. It can be your work. It can be when somehow you touch someone's life. And somehow it's those special moments, and somehow it's meaningful to you. Somehow it really moves you. Now in the positive way, it's a semantic reaction of real wealth and creativity in that way. So think about something like that, because in a moment I'm going to invite you to do the same thing. We're going to just layer and make it even richer and fuller. Because your ability to select something and bring it in and just really represent it in a wealthy way and just add more and more meaning to it. Many of the things we do as adults, and especially being here in a self-development workshop, you have given reading and learning rich meanings. So that sometimes maybe one of the richest facets of life is just getting off to a table by yourself with a cup of coffee and just reading a good book. Not to mention any, but it's one of the real pleasures of life. Or it might be one of the things that really moves you is to have a deep, intimate, personal conversation. That is that talk that gets to the heart of things, that just it changes you, it changes them, and it's like one of those special moments. So if you pick something that is rich in meaning, we want to explore it. So who's got something like that? Because I want to interview you with regard to that and utilize that as something that we'll start to amplify. The patterns on 23, the questions that follow up, are these meaning mechanisms. How do you represent it? How vividly? What do you call it? How do you language it? How do you evaluate it? How do you believe? So we just go up the levels to identify that. So that is where we're going to start with something. The reason to do this is really to ownership of how I can enrich something with meaning. So that's what we're going to do with regard to this. Once we do that, let me tell you a little bit about the pattern. Step 2 is we're going to integrate the feelings of that to experience the meanings fully in our body. Now in neurosemantics, we call step 2 coaching the body to feel an idea. So that we're going to embody the meaning and to feel it and to coach the body. So we're going to ask some questions about that What do you feel? How much do you feel? And we'll go through some of the body pieces. Then step 3, we'll own and quality control it, stepping back so that we can become aware and notice how we've accessed and created so much passion. How much have you owned that you're doing this? It's from your mind, emotional powers that you're creating this. How much more could you own it? What are the components? So what we're doing is really becoming aware as we pull apart the strands to identify when we semantically load something in a very positive way, how do we do it? Because as you become aware of that skill, this is going to be really critical. And then we will start using this. So step 4, identify something you want to endow more meaning with. Now, if you've been through some of the neurosemantic trainings, APG, Accessing Personal Genius, we do this in a similar way when we do the pleasure pattern. What do you have lots of pleasure? So that once I can identify how I turn on pleasure, then I can start scanning all around my life. Where else could I have this feeling of pleasure? And the purpose is that one of the things that brings out our best is if we're having fun. So where could I have pleasure reading, interacting, driving, doing my bills, working with my IRS agent? Because if I can spread pleasure, which is one of the fields of meaning, so it might be pleasure or appreciation or honor or respect or love, any of these really positive, powerful, passionate emotions, if I can take ownership, I did that. Because too often we sit around waiting for the trigger and something to trigger us and, oh, I'm feeling. And we forget that we created that feeling. So we're going to take ownership and then start spreading it and giving more meaning. Because if meaning doesn't exist, and if you're the meaning maker, you can give anything rich meanings. Everything could become meaningful. Now this is the opposite of the existentialists. The European existentialists realize that there's no meaning, everything is meaningless, and their next conclusion was, is everything meaningless, then what's the use? Some of the other existentialists said, well, we do create the meaning, so let's take some ownership of that. Well, we're going to just take this to the next level. If we are the meaning makers, let's make everything meaningful. Why spend a moment of your life doing something meaningless, futile, worthless, insignificant? Why do that? Why not add meaning to everything? Oh, it's too much passion, too much pleasure. Okay, well, somebody has to do it. So I figure we should do it so that we can have just a lot more pleasure and passion out of life. And so we're going to reclaim these powers. So who would like to do this demonstration with me and just be more passionate and pleasurable and meaningful than you've ever been before? So, what in life do you already just endow with lots of meaning? What is rich in meaning for you?
My creativity.
Your creativity, okay. And creating what?
Well, right now I'm focusing on photography.
Okay, photography.
Yes.
Okay, so when you think about photography and the photography you're doing?
Pleasure.
Okay.
Seeing something and artistically, or and then taking the picture, printing it, and sharing it with somebody.
Okay. So what is the meaning of that? What does that mean to you, to see a picture, take it, give it to someone else?
Well, it's sharing my vision.
Okay.
What does it mean to me? I don't know.
What else does it mean?
I just get a huge charge
What
out of it.
A huge charge. There's the emotional of feeling that meaning. So when you feel that huge charge and you see something and you're selecting it and thinking about how to reproduce that, how to take that, what else comes to mind as far as how is that meaningful and significant? What is the value in that?
Well, it just feels good.
Okay.
It's a way of sharing myself
Okay.
and sharing my view of the world. I
Okay.
guess.
Sharing yourself, sharing your view of the world.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of that? Why do that? How is that significant, important to you, sharing your view of the world, sharing yourself?
Well, it's giving a part of myself.
Okay. Giving a part of yourself.
Yes. So it's coming from the outside in, or the inside out.
Inside out.
Right.
How much are you feeling that significance now? If 0 is none and 10 is absolute, where are you on that scale of feeling the significance of sharing a part of yourself, your perception on the world?
Well, I'm pretty high because I've just spent 2 days photographing somebody else's world,
Okay.
and the excitement of, creating a story, a picture story of that.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's pretty high, so 8 or 9
is.
level?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know that?
How do I know that?
Just kind of be with that inside. How do you know that you're feeling at 8 or 9 the sense of this meaningful, how rich this is to
Well, it makes
photograph?
me smile.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can feel it in my body and excitement about it.
Okay. Where do you feel it in your body?
In my chest.
Okay. And what is that? Is that
Oh, just kind of a warm feeling.
so some warmth? Is there any change of your breathing? What is the breath of feeling that richness?
Probably get a little faster.
Okay. Beating a little faster?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're feeling it here. There's that excitement. What else is going on inside? The smile?
Well, my brain is whirling, trying
Your
to...
brain is whirling.
Yes, figuring out, okay, how am I going to present this spatially? How am I going to lay the pictures out? What kind of backgrounds am I going to use? I mean, just...
Okay. So you got a lot
what
of
kind of
questions back
frame?
there.
Yeah.
What kind of background? How are you going to lay it out? There's a lot of questions.
Yes.
And is this convey to you creativeness, creativity? Or what does it mean to you?
It conveys creativity because it's going to be unique. It's going to be something of my own.
So that sounds like that's pretty special when it's unique, when it's your own. But that makes it really rich in meaning. Okay, so uniqueness and my own. And you got all these questions, and the brain is whirling. Is that good?
Oh,
you like
I
that?
think so.
You like that whirl? Is that as good as wine?
Better.
Better. So that's better than a Marlowe. Okay, what else is going on as you think about photographing?
Well, the sharing, the
Okay.
Expectation of sharing, of
Okay.
giving somebody a gift.
So
A
sharing.
gift that came out of my creativity.
So it's a gift from your creativity
Yes.
and an expectation of sharing?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, I try to not have huge expectations about that because I could be disappointed. And
Okay.
I could not get the reaction that I expected.
Okay.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So what is the expectation then?
Actually, I think the satisfaction comes more from my own
Okay.
processing, my own doing.
Okay.
And I guess the other is kind of a frosting on the cake.
Okay, so the satisfaction is your own doing
Yes.
and your own sharing.
Sense of accomplishment.
So that's also what it means. Not only your uniqueness and something special from you, but the accomplishment, the sense of accomplishment. Yes. Okay, and then if you do get a response, then that's frosting on the cake.
Yes.
Okay. How much are you feeling that now?
Feels pretty good.
Okay. Okay. How much do you recognize that you have created this state and that you're the one who creates the meaning by looking at it through the lens of these frames of it's unique, it's mine, it's accomplishment, and that creates those feelings of satisfaction and excitement and all the feelings that come from that?
I think I recognize that.
Okay. If 0 is no acknowledgement and ownership, and 10 is is full, where are you on that scale of really owning that?
Well, maybe between an 8 and a 9, and I'm here to get to the 10 and above.
Okay. Do you have permission to fully own that it is your mind emotion system that has attached so much value and meaning to photographing, sharing, looking for that unique perspective?
Yes. I do.
Have that
Yes.
permission?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like you just to, because it's already in your body pretty fully, and so as we coach the body to feel that and to do that, you might take the words, I created this.
I created this.
Okay. And just notice how that feels as you think about, you said you were recently with somebody and you took some of the photographs there and looking at your unique, and it's meaningful because I make it meaningful. How's that settle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
With this, and just hold that in place, because from this place, what else do you do every day that's not all that meaningful, but you would like to be more meaningful, significant, that if you could be in this state, this place, and bring your uniqueness, your accomplishment, your perspective, your sharing, and bring it on something so mundane, so common, that now that could become more meaningful, what would you like to attach that to?
My income tax return.
Doing your income tax return.
I was supposed to send it in before I came here, and I didn't do it.
Okay. So let's just attach that and see what would happen, so that as you think about doing the income tax return, and we're just going to connect that you would like that to be more meaningful and significant? Think carefully before you answer that one.
No, I'd just like to get it done. I don't think it has to be.
Okay. So in terms of meaning, we may not want to.
Yeah.
We may want to just make it. How meaningful is it now? How significant, important, rich in meaning is it now? Where would it be on that scale?
Well, it's definitely an away from motivation.
Okay. Right now, you're doing it just because you don't want the IRS knocking on the door.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What would be a reason to do it that give you some motivation to do it?
A reason to do it. Okay. Being a good citizen.
Being a good citizen. Okay. And I'm tempted to invite you to take some of the things meaningful to you, like accomplishment.
Okay, accomplishment, that works.
And then there may be some other values, like being efficient with it, being quick with it, being complete, whatever is valuable, whatever meaning you could add, that if you add that, it might not bring it up to a 6, but it would be enough so that...
Finishing it. Finishing
it.
something. Finishing anything is positive.
Okay, so finishing it. Mm-hmm. So if you finished it, what would be the meaning? If you finished it on time and in an effective, accurate way, what would that mean?
I could get out the American flag and...
Okay. Would it be an accomplishment?
Yes.
Could it fall into that
Sure.
category?
Yeah.
Okay.
An accomplishment and, okay, something necessary. Okay, I'll relate it to part of the wealth building, whatever.
Okay, so related to the creation of wealth
Right.
building, and then just that accomplishment at some level.
Yeah.
Okay. So taking those meanings, and just imagine bringing those meanings, since you're the meaning maker, bringing those meanings to that. And look at it with those eyes. Look at finishing the tax returns with those eyes and notice what happens. How does that feel?
It's hard to get ecstatic about it.
Okay.
Oh, I would definitely feel good when I put the stamps on the envelope
Okay.
and mail it. Yeah.
So we're not going after ecstatic,
Right.
but feeling good that I've
Yeah.
achieved and accomplished it.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So would you like to give it those meanings? Would you like that to be your frame?
Oh, I'd like a positive sense of doing it, yes.
Okay.
Doing it because I want to and whatever.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've played with this one. Is there something in everyday life that is not all that meaningful that you would like, since doing a tax return you don't want to get that to a static, is there something you'd like to be more static about and bring some really rich meanings to that now is just so-so?
Yes, I'd like to do more writing.
Do more writing?
Yes.
Okay. And any particular kind of writing?
I'm working on family history.
Family history?
Yes.
Okay. When you think about doing that now, writing the family history, how rich in meaning is that now?
Well, it's very important to me.
Do you feel that importance?
Yes. The problem that, I almost flunked English in college, okay? So there's sort of a, you're not good enough about this aspect.
Okay. So would you like the writing the family history to be rich in meaning?
I'd like it to be as much fun as photography.
As much fun as photography?
Yeah.
So let's take the frames that we know that puts you into that rich state of photography,
Yeah.
that is your unique perception, it's your sharing, it's your accomplishment, that sets off excitement and anticipation and everything else. Let's take that to writing the family history.
Okay.
Okay, so when you look at it from that's what it's going to mean. My unique perception, my sharing, my giving a piece of myself, my accomplishment. How do you now experience that?
Looking better.
Okay, okay. So what we're doing is seeing if we can make it more meaningful and significant. Do you need to add anything else to it so that any other frame that if you looked at in that frame would also turn up and make it richer in meaning?
The meaning is there, okay? It's the
process of doing
Yeah.
it. So what in the process is holding you back, stopping you, interfering? Is it that old memory?
Yeah, I'm not going to do it perfectly, or I'm not going to.
Okay, I'm not going to do it perfectly.
Right.
Okay, so there's that frame about the writing,
Yeah.
and that kind of holds you back. Are you ready to suspend that meaning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Does that meaning, this frame, I might not do it perfectly, and I just barely got through grammar in college, does that serve you well?
Oh, heck no.
Should I dare ask you, how many years have you had that in your head?
Well, that was, let's see, I think it was about 55 years ago, possibly.
Okay, so have you had plenty of time to demonstrate that it's not that useful?
Yes.
Okay. Don't need another year or two.
No.
Okay. So what if you suspend it? What if you, as a meaning maker, saying, I don't need that frame. That does not help it to be fun, for me to enter into it, to make it a rich experience with my unique perspective, what I've got to share, and my accomplishment. What if you suspended it so that every time it came up, you just said, no, you're...
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so when you do that, suspending that meaning and looking at that with the way you can add meaning to it, what happens?
That I can create something very special.
Okay. So does it feel meaningful now?
Yeah.
Okay. What's happening in your body? Have you...
A lot of movement.
Okay. And what would you call that feeling? What is the emotion that comes from thinking about writing the family history?
Anticipation.
Okay, anticipation. Okay.
Eagerness, actually.
Okay, some eagerness.
Yeah.
Okay. The part of your mind that makes up your mind, the part of your mind that chooses and that sets out a pathway of what to do, when to do it, how to do it, the part of your mind that chooses, I'd like to write this history, I'd like to have fun doing it, I'd like to add my contribution, I'd like to achieve this, the part of your mind, as it begins to think about this week, next week, the months, the rest of this year, leading in there, is it willing just to keep adding richer frames so this becomes richer and fuller as you move through this process?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, think that part of your mind to be on the outlook, the lookout for, kind of like radar, just how else can I make this a richer experience for me? And is there any objection now to doing it?
No, except, I don't know what's going to pop up
Okay.
while I'm in the process of doing it.
So imagine being in the process and then something pops up.
Go away.
As a meaning maker, as a creator of your experience, are you able to bring it in, just look and see if it has anything of value, and if not, just to release it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how's that?
Very exciting.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as a meaning maker, we're just looking at how we do it and layering it. Any questions on the process, if you followed through the step-by-step process there?
She was using a lot of visual words, and that's probably her primary way of processing. And I noticed you were shifting back into trying to drag her into feelings.
Drag her into feelings.
So, I mean, is there any value in staying with her model of the world and trying to work within that, or are you trying to enrich it by adding other processes into it?
Right. Because photography is visual by its very nature, and when you see that, you feel what. So we're just making it richer. So.
Just adding more dimensions.
Yeah. Well, and step 2 is embodying it. We want to embody the feeling of whatever it is that creates that feeling. So the visual that creates it, the sound that creates it, the words that create it, and then how do you feel that? How do you embody it? So we want the whole mind-body system fully representing and experiencing it. So searching for something where you already give rich meaning, and then taking ownership of that, and to recognize that it fits a value. And it may take a little time as you bring down the frame to look at it, because all you know is just the feeling. And Marge gave us several feelings at first, and we didn't know where it was coming from. Because she was feeling excited, and she was feeling this, feeling that. And so it comes from some value, some criteria, something important. So you can use those words as synonyms. How's that valuable? What's important about that? What do you get from that? So those will all be synonyms of the meaning. And as we find it, then just feeding it right back. And usually that's what we'll try to transfer over to something else that we'd like to be significant to us. So any questions on the process? It's a pretty straightforward one as we go exploring. As you do so, anticipate the person may not know how or why, what's the frame that's driving it. And so just this is where creating some rapport and just being with them until they go searching and encouraging them to say what's ever on your mind, whatever's coming. So you may need to do some amplification. This is important, isn't it? How's it important? How do you know? What's inside letting you know this is significant? And then taking that ownership. Once you take ownership, and this is a powerful thing, once you take ownership, then whatever your circumstance, you have the tools and the mechanisms for giving meaning. And this is what creates resilience. It's what creates leadership. It's what creates the ability to really take charge of your life, is your ability to not let the circumstances determine your emotional state. But you choose your emotional state and go looking for how to give meaning. Well, let's...
Basically, Michael, what this pattern is for is to juice up something that's already good, to make a good thing better, to amplify, to augment. And then we're going to do something else with that, I suppose.
Well, step 4 is when we start doing it. What would you like to make richer in meaning in your life? And so usually pick something... I wouldn't recommend, doing taxes, but something that is significant, but doesn't feel that way anymore. You've lost the excitement, the joy, the passion is gone, but you'd like to make it rich in meaning again. The people who learn to exercise every day, it is rich in meaning to them. That's why they do it every day. They're getting a lot out of it. So that would be something. People who study and are studious and who do that and do that with regularity and systematic, it means a lot to them. People who take time to keep their relationships rich and full, it's meaningful to them in some way. And so as you find something that's natural for you, then we'll just start spreading that around. And so I wouldn't recommend it right now. Later on, you can certainly do it. I wouldn't recommend it at the beginning to find something that's difficult that you want to give meaning to. First of all, just start spreading it around, and then, because there'll be a couple other things we'll want to do if it's difficult. Kind of like Marge had in the back of her mind, there were some meanings that was getting in the way. So for right now, just ask the person to suspend the meanings, put them on hold or set them aside so that it doesn't interfere with your ability to give meaning. We'll deal with that tomorrow in the Crucible. All right.
Michael, in the step number 7 in the question, any objection against them, how do you handle this?
If they have an objection, we'll slap them. Yes, you must be miserable the rest of your life. The objection usually has hidden a resource behind it. So what's the objection? And so as the person identifies it, you can then reframe it and integrate it, because the objection has valuable information. So that's why asking Marge, this frame, this memory, does it have any value? And it didn't have any value. But sometimes it does have value. Sometimes it's just an old frame I've been in, I've used for a long time, I'm familiar with it, it has no value. But if it has value, then what is the value? And actually, whatever that answer is, so that's meaningful to you. That's significant to you. And you may have to go up a couple levels. And given that, whatever that is, how is that meaningful? Until you find something and they find something that now becomes part of the meaning of it.
So if you were to ask the objection question, and then you find something of value, and then you kind of peel that off and put it into the meaning. Now, once you've done that, do you go back to the objection? Is there anything else?
Yeah.
Until there's nothing else, then was there any other reason why you should keep this with these things peeled off?
Yeah. So, for instance, let's say that an objection is I've got a voice an objection. There's a feeling inside me that if I do this, it'll offend somebody or hurt someone's feelings or someone won't be liking me. So, what's your positive intention? Well, I'm wanting to keep my friendships, keep my relationships. So that's valuable to you, keeping your relationships. Keeping your relationships, how would you do it as you give it this meaning here? How could you do this and keep your relationships? And as the person now is going to, that'll self-organize to come up with some answer. So we just put it right back in there so that they're not sacrificing or paying that price for doing that. So we'll just integrate the thing right back.
So basically you meditate it? Is that what you're doing? You meditate it?
So we're bringing that to another higher level and keeping that, which they say is valuable and significant. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And setting, without answering it, without giving them the answer, letting them come up with, because we asked the question, how can you do this and maintain this frame? So it'll help them to come up with a synergy. If they don't know, if they consciously don't know, this is where saying the part of your mind that looks for answers and has solutions, the creative part of your mind, will it be on the lookout for how to answer this question in the days and the weeks to come? And then we can set in force a process of moving into the future looking for those resources.
Put it on search.
Put it on search mode. Well, let's do just 10 minutes each, finding something really rich and meaningful to find out how you do that as a meaning maker. So grab it. So how did this pattern go for you? How did this go? Were you able to find something you give rich meaning to, discover some of how you do that, take ownership, and then start giving other things some rich meanings? Okay. That's the design of this. In NLP we call it framing and reframing. Framing and reframing the meaning of something. And we have so many ways to do it. The 10 basic categories that we gave you this morning is just the beginning. On page 41, I think, in your manuals, and we'll look at this tomorrow a little bit more, but it'll give you a list of meta questions. 40 in your manuals begins the meta questions. And you'll see you've got pages after pages and pages of different things that you can bring that will give more meaning to it. Now, the first ones will be simple things like, well, what thought comes, or what feeling comes, or what memory comes, or what imagination. And when you get to the meta levels, it'll be, what do you believe about that? What is that? How is that important? How is that significant? What's the pleasure? What's the permission? And you can see that we've got a whole list of about 80 meta questions. We are meaning makers. And we make meaning. We've just got so many ways of constructing the structure of reality for us, and whatever constructions you make starts to create that fabric of reality for you, which then will send signals and commands to the nervous system to feel. So that'll give you just many other, if you get stuck with any word that doesn't work, you've got many other places to go with those meta questions. The meta questions can pull apart meaning, and the meta questions can construct meaning. And so it just gives you a lot of places to work with it. So as a meaning maker, if indeed nothing means anything except as I construct it, then we really can step up now to give lots of meaning to the different things of our life, to raise the quality of the meanings of our life. As you did that exercise, there might have been some little nagging things, old meanings, different kinds of meanings that get in the way. Did anybody have that experience? So what we now want to do, that we've been looking at the structure, is to deal with the cognitive distortions. This is page 25, the cognitive distortions. This comes from the field of rational emotive therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy, because there are fallacious ways of thinking, fallacious ways of drawing conclusions, of creating an explanatory process. So some of our cognitions, our thoughts, are distorted. We all go through this list of cognitive distortions because it's the way we grow up in our mind conceptually, And so as children, we all overgeneralize. As children, we do all or nothing thinking. As children, we label, we blame, we mind read, we prophesy, we emotionalize, we personalize, we awfulize. So these distortions are just part of how we grow up and the thinking patterns we use when our cognitive powers are just developing. Hopefully we grow out of those. But many of us don't. Many of us get really skilled at one or the other of these cognitive distortions. So sometimes with a 5-year-old brain or a 13-year-old brain or a 53-year-old brain, we draw some conclusion and we hold it, but it was created out of distorted mapping. Just didn't conceptualize it in a healthy way. So the cognitive distortions, I think we got 3 pages of those, and then after that you got 3 pages of some cognitive clearing and empowerment for more accurate map making, and that'd be more of a mature way of thinking and mapping things. And with each of these, you can see that I've made a list of the limitation or the self-sabotage that this kind of thinking does versus the empowerment for unleashing that kind of thinking does. So we could spend a lot of time on the cognitive distortions, the cognitive clearing. Mostly, and at the end of each one of these, I have just a summary list of them so that once you kind of get acquainted, and most of these are fairly easy to explain, there's just a list that you could use now as a checklist. Let me run a checklist on the talk that I just gave, the presentation I just gave to you as I talked about what something meant to me. Let me do a checklist. Was there any overgeneralizing in that? Was there any personalizing? Any awfulizing? Any shoulding? Any musting? And some of the other cognitive distortions, so that you and I can actually step back from our construction of meaning to look at maybe it's a cognitive distortion that needs to be cleared out. When we get stressed, most of us fall back into the cognitive distortions. When we get stressed, when we feel threatened, when we're not resourceful, we start labeling, naming, blaming, judging, beating ourselves up, overgeneralizing. So these cognitive distortions is a challenge to grow up out of them and to catch us, to catch ourselves. So Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck and others who worked on developing this list, they have provided a way for us to do a quick check of the cognitive distortions. And so I've put them in this manual so that as you become aware of them, if you catch them, and if you catch a pattern that you engage in, because most of us get good at one or the other of these, and then it creates a cognitive distortion of how we map our meanings. Then our meanings themselves are distorted and maybe toxic thought patterns, fallacious ways of mapping, and they don't take us where we want to go, and we end up getting stuck, limited, leashed in some way with these cognitive distortions. So as you catch, if any of these are your pattern, so as you go through there, let me just read through just real quickly so that you get a sense of it. On page 25, overgeneralizing, taking a few facts or none at all, and jumping to premature conclusions and assuming them to be true. Assuming that a negative experience in one area pervades every aspect of life. So it's very appropriate for a 5-year-old. It's not so for a 35-year-old. So overgeneralizing and taking just one or two facts and just jumping to conclusions. All or nothing thinking. In fact, all or nothing thinking, dichotomizing, was the main cognitive distortion that Abraham Maslow spent most of his entire life addressing. Because he felt like it's this either-or choice, this black or white world that puts us at such inner conflict, and he called it dichotomizing, and the solution was to synthesize. So many of the dichotomies that we live in, work or play, I need work-life balance because I got too much work, not enough play. And we treat it like it's an either-or choice. But the people who are the best self-actualizers, it's all merged together, and they can't even tell the difference between work and play. Their work is play. Their play is work. And you talk to them about work-life balance, and they say, what are you talking about? I live passionately every day, and I do this, and it doesn't feel like work at all.
Well, there's a great example of that. A couple of years ago, I was at a party with a friend, and we were talking about economy and ecology, as if those things were like two things that can never fit together. And
okay.
we were talking, and then we thought, well, why don't we create an ecological economy or an economical ecology? Something like,
okay.
So we kind of
synthesize.
And recently, at the European community meeting in Brussels, the current how do you say that chairman, he actually used exactly those words.
Wow.
And suddenly the whole conflict between those two areas was gone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Dennis Weaver started a foundation called Economics.
Economics, all right.
And
yeah.
he teaches it in, that has been taught in universities, all sorts of places.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we start synthesizing what otherwise would be polarities and pulling us apart and dichotomizing, Maslow said all dichotomizes pathologizes, and all pathology dichotomizes. Mind, body. Gotta make a choice now. Mind, spirit. Selfish, unselfish. Which will it be? But as we mature, we can make maps that synthesize things and not build conflict into them. And so that's where this cognitive distortion. Labeling. How many people are afraid of words? Word phobia. Are there any words who, if we use those words, would push some buttons? I'm afraid of a word. Well, most of us have been trained that, and so we try to get over it in childhood. Sticks and stones will break my bones. So we try to push away words, but then even as adults, we still have word phobias, that we're afraid of the word that as a symbol. And so getting over that, most fear of criticism is fear that they'll say that word. So labeling, that the recognition, the map is not the territory. The map is not the territory. And we grow up and get beyond labeling, recognizing that. But oftentimes, the words we give, we label it, and in psychology, we've got a whole system for this. It's called the DSM-4. The Bible of how people are broken. Doesn't tell you what to do with them, just here's the label. But some people will take a label and, I'm manic depressive. And we use labels to identify. And then, or we could become afraid of a label. Afraid what the label would mean if they gave us that label. So we walk around, don't throw the label at me. And so cognitive distortion, it's just a word. And we don't need to be afraid of words.
An example of the label just comes to mind. In Holland, cancer has the word cancer has a really, so 20 years ago, people would just call it K.
We don't want to say the whole word.
No, you don't want to say the whole word. You never know what's going to happen.
In this culture, it's called the big C.
So we load it with meaning, and oftentimes, and I'm guessing, that it's loaded with, if you have cancer, it's death.
It's death, yeah.
So we load it, it's so semantically loaded, and we don't even know the facts about it, but we think it means the death penalty, and now we just are scared to death.
Yeah. Or like AIDS has even more.
Yeah. And so this is where, if we don't make that map territory distinction, it's like we have a child's mind again, afraid of words.
I was going to say that in our own culture we have a pair of words that is constantly slammed in our face every time you watch television, and the people who wear it find themselves constantly in a situation of being, having to constantly look for new meaning as to how to deal with it. The word sex offender,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
That's a group of people I work with as a therapist.
Okay.
And quite literally that, talk about fear of word and the way that the media hypes it to the point where you literally think that everybody is Wesley Allen Dodd or Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever, when, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. So here's another cognitive distortion. Once you're aware of the cognitive distortions, being able to recognize them, and then we'll go to the cognitive clearing that would clear those things out. Blaming, accusational thinking that transfers blame and responsibility for a problem to someone else. So one of the great fears is the fear of feeling like I'm responsible. But if you have that fear of being responsible, you're never going to self-actualize, because we're not taking responsibility into ourselves. And so even this whole experience of blaming, so that someone uses the old accusation finger and says you're responsible for this, and we can get blame or accusation so loaded with meaning that it means I'm no good, I'm inadequate, I'll burn in hell, whatever it is. And we get so afraid of being accused or being blamed, and so it becomes a semantically loaded thing. So we can't even think straight when it occurs to begin to explore it. Mind reading is when I assume I know what you're thinking and feeling and your motives, and I say you are doing this or that, feeling this or that, having that intention, and I'm just mind reading because you didn't tell me that. And so that's also a meta-model distinction that we have in NLP. Prophesying the future is not only mind reading other people, but mind reading the future and predicting. Emotionalizing is taking counsel of one's motion as if it were an infallible source of reality, assuming that if feeling an emotion, feeling the emotion makes it real, and therefore I've got to act on it. So emotionalizing. So children oftentimes, when they feel something, they think they are that. I feel like a failure, therefore I am a failure. I feel rejected, therefore I'm a reject. I feel lonely, therefore I'm doomed to loneliness. That the emotion is the reality, and that's confused. So it's a distortion in that way. So emotionalizing.
Is it a developmental reality that kids have to go through that? Or is it just the environment that the parents are acting that way and they're doing
Well, that helps a lot.
Right. But it is?
But
like they have to go through that?
well, see, children, until they get to the operational phase, when they're and concrete thinking, as long as they're in that concrete thinking stage, 4 to 7, they're concrete thinkers. So concepts and conceptual reality, that the word is the thing. So it's it's just a developmental stage we grow through, and this is where Piaget's work is such a valuable contribution to all of this. So there's emotionalizing. Emotionalizing, a lot of us adults still do that emotionalizing, that if we feel something, it must make it so, or I must do something about it So then it's hard to be with our emotions, especially the negative ones. It's hard to be rejected and just be with that emotion that this person didn't like whatever it is I offered, because they're not only emotionalizing, but they're also personalizing. It must be about me. And this is also in children, because their ego is egocentric, not in a moral way, but just because their world starts and stops with them. They personalize. Everything is about them. They see the world through that because they haven't learned conceptually to imagine, let me step out and imagine what it must be like from your eyes, or her eyes, or someone. And so they don't have that conceptual ability to step aside, and so they personalize. Which is why when a trauma happens to a little child, they get in, they make the map, it must be about me. And they can feel guilty and bad for things that happen out there that have nothing to do with them. And it's a child's mind. And so being able to say to an adult, how old were you when you made that map? Okay, it makes sense that you made it then, but it was just that personalizing that you did at that particular age. So personalizing. Awfulizing is an interesting one because we take a word that, as Albert Ellis says, has no reference. Well, I know it's unpleasant. I know it's uncomfortable. I know you don't like it. I know you wish it didn't happen, but how is it awful? What are you actually talking about? Awful. I know you don't want it, don't like it, don't appreciate it, wish it didn't happen, but how is it awful? But here we take a word and we treat it like it's real, and it starts to become real to us. And so we awfulize. Anybody here a good awfulizer? You can take a small thing and just turn it into the end of the world and just get so desperate about it because you said the word. Shoulding, when we should all over ourselves, or if you're really good, shoulding on others. Who should on you today? You must do this, you should do that. And so the shoulding, the masturbating, the tyranny of the shoulds, as Karen Horney says, this is where we take one of these operators, modal operators, and we put our rules and impose them on other people. And then it feels that battle. Someone tells us what we should or must do or have to do. And if you don't take instruction well, if by temperament you're strong-willed, which means you define yourself in terms of your choices, and someone tells you what you should do, then you feel that sense of threat. Because your map is, that's how I identify myself, I choose. But choice has been taken away from me. Now I feel threatened. If you're a real strong, high-level, strong-willed person by temperament, you can't even tell yourself anything. I'm going to get up and exercise tomorrow. So you get up. Why do I have to do it? You're not going to tell me what to do. And so they'll have a reaction, a polarity response to their own commands. Can you take your own orders? Fleshes out a strong-willed person by temperament. And so the shoulds then become, we're not at ease and at peace with constraints that require things, the requiredness of different things. Filtering out, over-focusing on one aspect of something to the exclusion of something else. So filtering out the positive as well as solutions, so creating a tunnel vision. And that's part of also stress, what happens as cognitive distortion. Impossibility thinking, using the word can't, and imposing semantic limits on, I can't stand criticism. I can't stand when she talks to me that way. I can't stand it when he rolls his, I can't. And we start mapping all the limitations. And if they're psychological can'ts, like those would be psychological can'ts versus physiological can'ts, I can't fly, versus I can't stand. So I always like to say, so do you stoop or kneel when criticism comes since you can't stand? What are you talking about? And then discounting. So these are some of the cognitive distortions, and oftentimes as we start making meaning, we'll catch our cognitive distortions, and that's what needs to be cleared out so that the mapping and the framing, the meaning making, can be cleaner. And so the next list is just all the substitutes of how to expand it into more adult thinking. And oftentimes, just catching it is sufficient. Oh, that's what I'm doing. And so just running a checklist on it. Oftentimes, this is the value of a good listener who listens to you and just feeds it back, just reflects it back, or a coach or a trainer who just reflects back, who says essentially, did you hear what you just said? How is it that you can't do that? And how is that about you forever? And so we just reflect back so we can hear the meanings that we've been creating. Because a lot of times they can go so fast that I don't even hear it. So these are just little signposts and flags to flag our attention to where the kind and quality of the meanings may be really low quality. And if we want to bring up the quality, we're going to have to bring up the kind of thinking that creates the mapping. So that's what these cognitive distortions are really, really useful for. This becomes significant when we do the next piece, because the next piece after our break, I want to do a pattern that I'm going to call meaningful to the core. Because of all the meanings you make about people, about time, about effort, about career, about money, about food, all the meanings you make about all the different things, the one meaning that is, if you're going to self-actualize, you're going to have to really get this one right, the meanings you make about you, the meanings you make about your worth, your value, your potentials. If you take some of these cognitive distortions and use them to make meaning about yourself, you can really create a living hell. So to be meaningful to the core, when we come back, we're going to be doing a pattern that we bring some real significant meaning to ourselves. Now, if your parents did not graduate from Parenting 101, and many didn't, then they probably did not know how to create some rich, robust, significant, inspiring meaning about you. And so you as me, with a 5-year-old brain or a 13-year-old brain, we probably put some frames that easily calls us into question. Anybody got a frame like that? You can easily call yourself into question. What we want to do is to look at some of those frames, do some clearing, and make such meanings that will be meaningful to the core, so that we'll start to believe in ourselves and our potentials, and in the right to make mistakes, in the right to be a fallible human being, so that those meanings, because those meanings that you make about yourself are just so you never leave home without them. So we want to clear out some of those cognitive distortions and do that pattern. So that's what we'll do when we come back as part of this process of making great meanings. So what we're talking about in meanings would be all your beliefs, all your values, all your understandings, all your maps, just all of those things. And then making those so that it's not only a meaning that you can get by with, I'm a human being, but it's a rich meaning. It's robust, strong, vigorous. It's inspiring. It calls to something within you that you want to live up to. And so it inspires. And so those are the meanings that we want to set, commission our body to feel, so it'll turn us loose as a meaning maker. So we'll do that when we come back. Comments, questions before we take a break? Well, let's take a 15-minute break, and when we come back, we'll be back.